what is more surprising is that even when a child is not born, we will have to make sure that he's immunized. Reason being, the pre-birth, in pre-birth segment, the mothers today, due to living in hygienic conditions and do not now carry maternal antibodies against so many diseases. And therefore, a newborn child would not have protection against those diseases. And therefore, we have to make sure that during the pregnancy itself, mother is immunized against those diseases. And therefore, the child, when born, continues to be healthy and survives. And on top, because of the advancement, as we see, mothers are now, in terms of breastfeeding, giving lesser duration as compared to previously. And also, our current schedules are very different. They start from 1.5 months onwards, which means for the first 6 weeks post-birth, the child will be at risk. So therefore, in the next 10 years, vaccines will become very, very critical and important, right from pre-birth to infants and small children to adolescents and adults and elderly. And for each of these groups, there is a different set of vaccines that are needed across the globe. Apart from that, there are several special target groups for vaccination in the 21st century, and we are already aware about travelers. When people move from one country to another, you really need yourself to be protected. Apart from that, there are several chronic diseases which actually trigger the use of immunosuppressants, and during that time, the immunity of the person goes down, and therefore would need to be protected with specific diseases like CMV, fungal infections, influenza, and respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. Majority of the diseases that all of us are exposed to still really need a new vaccine, and this is where I believe a lot of role for investment in technology becomes critical and important. Apart from that, patients with HIV would also need to be prevented from so many diseases like influenza, meningitis, pneumococcal, tuberculosis, etc. There are, on top, several emerging infections like AIDS, you have Ebola virus, and you have West Nile, and what not to say. Apart from that, then there are developing countries which are suffering from poverty, and they have a different range of diseases prevalent, and therefore the travelers to those countries really need to be protected from those diseases. When we talk of especially the large part of the current or today's market, we think in terms of the annual births that are there. Worldwide, there are 133 million children which are born every year. You will be surprised to note that it's only 12 million children, less than 10%, which are actually born in developed markets. And 90% of the birth or more is in the developing world, which is close to 121 million children. These are the numbers that actually survive. In the developed markets, you have a different regimen of immunization, and in the developing markets are different. In developed markets, you generally give around 5 doses per child, whereas in the rest of the world markets, you give 3 doses per child. So put together, you see there is a demand of 423 million doses of any standard vaccine put together globally, which is a huge number. The market potential today, as I said, will increase from $20 billion to almost $100 billion by 2023 with a growth rate of more than 50%. However, there is a big change that's going to happen between the market share of the developed world today, which is 70%, to what it would be in 2023. It will be decreasing, and it will go down to almost 50%, which means there is going to be huge demand in India and in the rest of the world countries for immunization, for different vaccines, almost for all age groups. So therefore, while the developed markets will continue to be attractive in terms of value and high gross margins, but the developing world will be all about quantity and low prices. However, the challenges in both the markets continue to be different. You have very high benchmarks when you talk about exports to the developed markets. You have very high standards of quality and regulatory work that you need to put together a dossier for these vaccines as compared to what you do for the developing markets. The success lever actually have been divided into 4 heads, that is availability, affordability, acceptability, and then sustainability. When you talk about availability, I believe it is the competence and capability for producing innovative, high-quality vaccines. And this, in the business of vaccines, is going to be critically important, especially for India, where the birth cohort is close to 23 million children, which is a very high percentage. And the Indian vaccine industry will actually have to rise to this occasion to ensure that we produce quality vaccines in the next decade. Why Indian industry should play that pivotal role? The answer is very simple, that the Indian vaccine industry and the Indian regulatory system with 120, almost 1 billion, over 1.2 billion population can become actually the role model for the whole developing world to really, copy and adopt. Our quality standards, our regulatory systems should be such that others should get motivated to follow them. And this is where actually the birth cohort lies, and therefore the production of vaccines can be much more affordable. The supply chain management can be less challenging as compared to getting access to these vaccines somewhere from the Western markets. When we think that wholesale produces, in fact, it's a fact that wholesale produces in the whole Western markets has been knocked off, and they have moved towards acellular produces because of their tolerance for side effects, a different limit that they have set. Whereas in the developing world, you still continue to use a wholesale produces vaccine. And so is the case with oral polio vaccine versus injectable polio vaccine. So all these issues actually make, for each country, the product portfolio very different from what you would see in the Western markets, especially also now more so in the middle income countries, which means that this is going to be a very tough task for a vaccine manufacturer from the developing world to craft a product mix for each country, to have production setups, align them with their demand scenarios, align them with the supply chain management, and its R&D efforts. So those are some of the, I would say, opportunities also and threats for vaccine manufacturers. Why India would be doing well in the vaccine industry? It's not just because for the last 3 to 4 decades, India has done a great contribution in producing high quality, innovative, as well as affordable vaccines, but also because the Indian political system is now becoming much more vibrant. There is a significant economic development that's happening in the country. There is a considerable amount of scientific and financial advantage that India today offers. There are several schemes that Department of Biotechnology, through its various organizations today, is actually investing in furthering the science and technology, as well as helping smaller companies to come up. There is a self-reliance in vaccine technologies. We are actually adopting WHO guidelines on GMP compliance. There is relatively low cost of production, and India today is playing a really global role in disease eradication. There are very good production plants in India. There is a strong export capability as of now, and there is a deep interest in increasing public and private partnership. There have been several unique models of collaborations which the Indian vaccine industry has seen, and some of the notable ones are MEN-A project of WHO, including several other new vaccine projects like Japanese encephalitis, and other vaccines like pneumococcal with Gates Foundation, PATH, IVI, WHO, DBT, as well as other industries. Going forward, while those were the challenges for the startup companies in India,